Let's go to the ABC Prime game, Notre Dame at Duke, game day at Duke for the first time. How about with the job that Mike Elko's done? It's truly remarkable. The guy's 13-4 as the head coach at Duke. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. Such a great defensive mind. So that starts with the first question. Mike Elko and Duke like to employ a lot of really interesting disguises. They do zone pressures, and they know where your answers are, so they have a defender waiting right there for your answer. So if they bring two guys defensively to Sam Hartman's right, and his outlet is a quick throw to the right, guess who's waiting right there? A corner, standing right outside, about to collapse on his outlet. So can Mike Elko and Duke used pre-snap disguises and pressures to confuse Sam Hartman? Now, I think when you look at what Sam Hartman's provided, I thought that there'd be maybe more of a downfield threat this year. I thought that might be kind of where Notre Dame would evolve. They would have a strong run game. They'd be really good off play action. They'd be able to crush you on the downfields. Now, that hasn't really materialized just yet. But one thing that I think Sam Hartman's done a good job of is being really accurate, making good decisions, being sound in his fundamentals, and kind of methodically working this offense down the field. It was on display last week, but they, of course, let themselves down on a couple of fourth down stops. Either way, this is going to be an interesting one to evaluate the wide receiver position. Jaden Thomas right now, questionable with a hamstring injury. His backup, Deion Colsey, is out. The Irish have 5 wide receivers that are on scholarship that are going to be available. A little thin at that position right now. The good news is Mitchell Evans has come into his own. A nice performance last week by the tight end, showcasing sure-handedness and a willingness to work the middle and uncover. And we already know that Holden Stays can be a matchup problem for defense because of the side speed combination there as kind of the H-back move tight end, and they can line him up at fullback as well. But it will be interesting how Mike Elko disguises coverage. Going against a veteran quarterback, it's one thing to confuse Cade Klubnik, who was starting his second career game when he played against the Blue Devils, had played last year. But it's a whole other thing to confuse a 6th-year starting quarterback that's one of the all-time greats, statistically speaking, in college football. The big thing also for Duke, when you play against Notre Dame, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get man coverage. It's as simple as that. It's very simple. You know exactly what's coming. You're going to get man coverage. Can they create enough separation with their wide receivers to beat the man coverage that they're going to get from the Irish secondary? Jalen Calhoun, extremely consistent for this Duke offense. Very, very consistent. Samir Hagans is kind of a solid slot receiver that can create some issues for you as well. And then Jordan Moore, who clearly has developed a rapport with Riley Leonard. Very interesting, I might add, because he was the guy that was battling with Riley Leonard in the preseason of 22 to be the starting quarterback. Well, now he's transitioned to wide receiver, and you can tell an offseason worth of work has allowed him to become more polished. But anytime you move a quarterback to wide receiver, that receiver, naturally, Jordan Moore in this case, has a great understanding of space, has a great understanding of coverage, knows how to uncover, knows how to find the vacancies defensively. But against man coverage, will he be quick enough, sudden enough, dialed in enough with Riley Leonard to be able to uncover? Riley Leonard's going to have to be very accurate in this game. He's going to get a lot of man coverage. There's going to be Notre Dame defensive backs draped on his wide receivers, and he's going to have to fit it into some tight windows. He's also gotten the ball out really quickly, which I would imagine is going to be very important in this game as well. Now, while the sack numbers, the pressure numbers, all those things for Notre Dame have been up and down this year, I know that on paper, people have really praised Duke's offensive line. I don't think they're a war daddy group. I think they're fine. I think they're serviceable. I don't think they're a liability. And against this group, if I watched the Clemson tape, that offensive line was getting pushed back, and Riley Leonard was getting that ball out immediately. Quick decisions, fast decisions, decisive and accurate on a lot of the underneath throws. So will he be able to do that? And if he does have to get the ball out quickly, will the separation be good enough against Cam Hart, who's at one corner, and Benjamin Morrison, who's at the other corner, who I think as a tandem are probably as good as you'll see across the board in the sport? Another question mark. Are Riley Leonard's legs going to continue to be a factor? As we saw in this long second half touchdown run against Clemson, Leonard's legs are one of the best attributes that he has. I mean, really does a good job in being able to, if nothing's there, he can tuck it and run. He can extend plays. He's savvy enough in the pocket to be able to negotiate pass rushers and find a crease to be able to exploit you. That'll be massive. And as you can see, how Notre Dame played against Brennan Armstrong, who I think as far as skill set, I think Leonard's better than Brennan Armstrong, but as far as skill set and capabilities with his legs, that's something that can be beneficial. Well, those linebackers for Notre Dame, they were all over Brennan Armstrong that whole game. The second he left the pocket, boom, they immediately triggered and they forced him to make a quick decision. So that will be something I watch as well. The other thing as well, second half. Who wins the second half? Because Duke, they have pitched 4 straight second half shutouts. The only touchdown they've given up against Clemson was on a muffed punt that was recovered at their own 16. So they've been really good in the second half. And then the other thing I'm watching too, the hangover effect, man. The hangover effect. Because Notre Dame last year against Ohio State beat them twice. Now you could tell me, hey, Marshall gashed them. Yeah, Marshall ran the ball really well. But was that more about what Marshall was? As you saw as the season went along, Marshall was very human. Or was that about Notre Dame losing their quarterback in that game and playing horrible run defense that was in some ways unrecognizable? I think it was because Ohio State, they were lingering, they were licking their wounds, and they didn't show up ready to play against the Thundering Herd last year. I think they get that fixed this year. I think they get that flipped this year. If you think about Notre Dame, that was arguably the most debilitating loss since 2005. I'm not going to reference the Bush push game because I know that Kubiak gets all bent out of shape, but that was probably the most heartbreaking Notre Dame loss that they've had in nearly 20 years. So I won't reference the Bush push game. That's not fair. That's low-hanging fruit. But either way, that I think is something that's going to be fascinating about this team. Can they bounce back? Will they bounce back? Or will Ohio State beat them twice? I like Notre Dame to bounce back big in this game. I love the matchup for them. I think they get the job done. And what I think is going to be a relatively low-scoring affair. I think both defenses will play well. I like Notre Dame kind of like a 24-10, 24-13 type of ball game or in that vicinity.